Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. This episode, I'll be talking about students suing after colleges charged them for services that were shut down during the pandemic, New York severely undercounted virus deaths in nursing homes, and Dr. Fauci warns pandemic potentially could get worse with new variants spreading across the world. But before we get started, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you'd like to contribute to the show, please go to notcensoredyet.com/donate. You'll find links available where you can help us out. It'll help us stay independent from outside influence and produce consistent quality content for you to enjoy. So let's get started. Multiple lawsuits have been filed from students across the country as a result of colleges and universities continuing to charge student tuitions and fees for services that were shut down during the coronavirus pandemic. Campus Reform reported on several lawsuits, including one filed earlier this month by an undergraduate student at Rice University. The class action lawsuit seeks $5 million from the university for not providing students the college experience they paid for, the outlet reported. The plaintiff and the members of the class have all paid for tuition for a first-rate education and on-campus in-person education experiences with all the appurtenant benefits offered by a first-rate university. Instead, students like the plaintiff were provided a materially different and insufficient alternative, the lawsuit says. And I have to agree, taking all your classes online is completely boring. It is not like going to school. You don't get to interact with people. It is extremely dry, and a lot of the professors don't know how to talk on a computer. They talk extremely slowly, or they have potato quality webcams, they have poor quality microphones, or it's just pathetic. And a lot of times they don't even show up to their classes. So what am I paying for other than basically an online book and online tests? That's basically what some of my classes amounted to, and I still had to pay thousands of dollars. And all my books were more expensive because all those online books with those online portals and the online whatever are all more expensive than just a physical book. Manhattanville College in New York is also being sued, Campus Reform reported. The school has allegedly refused to refund expensive fees it charged students for access to campus facilities it barred from using during the pandemic. The school promised to credit students up to $1,900 for unused room and board costs, but attorneys for a former student said that after the university found out that they weren't going to be returning to the school in the fall, they refused to pay him the fees. So it's basically the student went to school in the spring after spring break. At least this was my university. After spring break, they said, don't come back to school. And so all these students were basically left high and dry for their room and board. I guess these students were promised a refund, and but I guess he didn't receive it because he wasn't going to be attending that next year. Aside from lawsuits, students have also filed petitions urging their schools to return fees for services that had become unnecessary during the pandemic. As Campus Reform reported, students at Towson University at Towson, Maryland, which is offering approximately 85% of its classes online during the spring 2021 semester, published a second petition calling for the school officials to cancel or refund a $500 athletics fee, which they already petitioned Towson to cancel for the fall semester. At least $500 is that's not that expensive. I believe our athletics fee is close to $1,000 at my university per semester. It's bananas. And the worst part is our athletics department sucks. They don't win. It is embarrassing. And when you call them out for it, people say, "Where's your school spirit?" And I was like, "I don't need school spirit," or it's not having an absence of school spirit to call out the fact that we're spending $30 million on an athletic department. That sucks. That is not being, that's not having school spirit. That's actually having school spirit because that's saying, hey, let's pull the funding from the losers, right? The people who basically if you're on a sports team, right? As someone who played football, your goal is to win. And if you never win, then maybe you shouldn't be playing the sport. Maybe the coaches shouldn't be coaching. Maybe there shouldn't just be an athletic department. Maybe that money could be used someplace else. Maybe that money could be used to hire more professors. That money could be used to lower the cost of tuition for the rest of the students. Who knows? But I believe that tuition is too expensive. Tuition has outpaced the rate of inflation over the course of 40 years by like 1,000%. If you would go based off the rate of inflation, a year of university college should only cost about $10,000 to $12,000 a year. It shouldn't be costing $25,000 to $30,000 a year. It is getting bananas with these costs. So let's jump over to New York. Governor Cuomo, incompetent government kills people. Government in New York, Andrew Cuomo calls the Biden administration's rigorous and realistic approach to COVID 19 a welcome relief compared to the actions of the Trump administration, which is bananas. So, the difference between Biden and Trump, it's basically the difference you see between Cuomo and Governor DeSantis in Florida. You see a very heavy handed approach, you see a very king like approach, and then you see a very presidential approach, a very federalist approach, a very laissez faire approach. Where, I mean, President Trump basically said, the federal government is very inefficient at doing this. So we're going to delegate down to the state government, because even though the state government is inefficient, they are still more efficient than the national government, right? So we'll help pay the bill, but we're not going to call the shots because we are too slow to move by design. The federal government is designed to move extremely slowly, like it or not. And that's for a reason, because our founding fathers didn't want basically a mob rule of the federal government, and where things can get passed extremely quickly. That's why you have things like the filibuster, three branches of government, separation of powers, checks and balances, and all that stuff is to make sure the government cannot move too fast. It's better for a government to move too slow than to move too fast. And then you have Biden basically legislating with executive orders. His former self is now calling his present self a dictator. He signed over 30 executive orders in the first week of office, which is bananas, crushing the former record. And basically, now it's come to find out all the rumors about New York and all these basically accolades that have been given to Cuomo. I don't understand why he was even being considered for the vice presidential pick, but this guy is just a horrible individual. The New York State Department of Health may have undercounted COVID 19 deaths in some nursing homes by as much as 50%, according to a report from the state attorney general's office. An investigation also found many nursing homes failed to comply with critical infection control policies. 20 facilities remain under investigation. My office is releasing a report on our ongoing investigations into nursing homes' response to COVID 19 in New York. We have been investigating allegations of patient neglect and other concerning conduct that may have jeopardized the health and safety of residents and employees. We have found that public data undercounted COVID 19 deaths in some nursing homes by as much as 50%. Some nursing homes failed to comply with infection control protocols. Facilities with lower staffing ratings had higher COVID 19 fatality rates. So, why is this important? So, with the nursing home deaths, a lot of this was due to Cuomo's mandates that people be forced into nursing homes, even if they were COVID positive. Even after the data was starting to show that those most at risk were those that were older, those older than the age of 65, those with comorbidities, being overweight, diabetes, heart conditions, etc. So all of those things. So a lot of old people have those conditions in New York. So you have a governor forcing COVID positive patients into nursing homes, and then everybody starts dying, and you wonder why there was such a big spike in New York at the beginning of the pandemic. And for some reason, they gave this guy an Emmy. He wrote a book about his incompetencies, and and he was on TV basically cracking jokes with his brother. I don't understand how he's not recalled either. So many people lost their parents, lost their grandparents due to this person's incompetence. And as he says, incompetent government kills their citizens. Jumping over to the Hill, Fauci warns COVID 19 situation potentially could get worse given new variants. Anthony Fauci warned Thursday that the coronavirus situation in the United States potentially could get worse despite recent improvements, citing that the threat from new, more contagious variants of the virus. I think it potentially could get worse, Fauci said. He said, while we are certainly excuse me, he said that while we certainly are seeing, thankfully, a plateauing in cases, on the other hand, the thing that's troublesome now that we really need to keep our eye on are these variants. So, in my opinion, a lot of this plateauing comes from two things. The New Year's was 3 weeks ago, almost 4 weeks ago. So basically, you're plateauing because of that. Everybody went home. You had your rise in cases over the course of a couple weeks. You had your waxing and your waning, but then also your PCR tests are now less sensitive. So you're going to have less positive test results. You're going to have less false positive test results. New cases have been on the decline in the US, though they are still at extremely high levels. New cases have fallen to around 150,000 per day, down from a peak of over 200,000. Still, case levels remain much higher than they were in either spring or summer peaks last year. And the number could spike again, given the looming more contagious variants. One of those variants, first identified in the UK, is more contagious, but at least the current vaccines appear to work just as well against it. And that's the variant that when asked if we should limit travel from the UK, Fauci said no. He said, I don't see any reason to limit travel. And I'm old enough to remember when people were busting Trump's chops over not closing travel from China fast enough, saying, oh, well, still thousands of people came into the United States. Well, those were United States citizens. And you know what I would have done if I were king for a day during that time? I would have told those people to stay in those countries. I would have paid them $100 a day, $200 a day. You're going to stay in an NBA like bubble, right? So you're going to stay in a bubble, kind of like what the NBA implemented for its finals. You're going to stay here for 3 weeks. And at the end of that 3 weeks, we would have paid you anywhere between $2,000 and $6,000. If you were paid between $100 and $200 a day. After that, we will fly you home because we cannot risk this virus going into the United States of America. And basically, we'll tell your employer, basically, you are mobilized as if you're the National Guard, so they cannot fire you. Basically, give you the protection. Basically, you're doing your patriotic duty as an American of not spreading a pandemic into the United States. And that's what I would have done if I were king for a day. But hindsight is 2020. Maybe we can use something like that in the future because this isn't the first time something like this has happened, but it's the first time something like this has happened on this scale in the modern world where everybody has a cell phone. People can fly around. It only takes a couple hours to fly around the world now. So things are completely different than they were 100 years ago. So we need to adapt the way we address these issues. We can't just say, "Oh, you just need to mask up. Oh, you just need to take a vaccine." There's more steps we can do to really slow this down. And if we got ahead of it at the beginning, I think we could have basically slowed it down a lot more. But again, hindsight's 2020. But those same people that said Trump didn't close it down early enough, those people were saying that in October, September, during the debates. But back in March and February, they were calling him a racist, xenophobic fearmonger for shutting down travel from China. So you can't have it both ways, friends. You have to pick one or the other. Either the dude's an evil genius or he's a complete idiot. The more concerning variant from the standpoint of vaccines is from South Africa. Moderna, for example, said earlier this week that its study showed a 6-fold drop in neutralizing antibodies from its vaccine against the variant, though antibody levels were still above levels thought to be productive. So that's bananas. So the South African variant appears to be resistant, or not resistant to the vaccine, but seems to basically, the vaccine appears to be somewhat ineffective against it. We're already planning and implementing making a modified version of the vaccine that would ultimately be able to be directed specifically against the South African isolate, which is the most problematic of them all. More broadly, it is crucial that people get vaccinated as quickly as possible, Fauci said, because more people becoming immune cuts down on the virus's opportunity to spread and continue to mutate. So, on one hand, things look a bit better about plateauing, but on the other hand, we could have some difficult times that we have to be prepared for, Fauci said. So I have a concern about that. From my understanding about the vaccine actually doesn't keep you from getting sick. You do get sick with COVID. It just keeps you from developing symptoms. So you can actually still get other people sick, even if you're vaccinated. So it just keeps you from getting the really bad sickness to where you get really, really sick and die. And this needs to be corrected. I believe Fauci is spreading misinformation, basically saying it is crucial to get people vaccinated as quickly as possible because becoming immune, because you're not immune. You're just basically um, putting on body armor. That way, you're still getting shot, but you're getting bruised and broken ribs as opposed to a hole through your body. So it's still going to spread. I don't understand why he's spreading this misinformation. I don't know why they're touting the vaccine as like a vaccine, because from what I've been told and from what I've read, this vaccine isn't actually rated for basically making you immune from it. It makes you basically it gives you protection from the symptoms, not actually from the sickness. And I think that's a distinction that needs to be magnified by the mainstream media. But of course, they're not going to, because their fetishization with Dr. Fauci has become quite disturbing. And basically, whatever he says goes, and they're not going to question him about it until that useful idiot is no longer useful, I suppose. But I'm going to keep doing some research. I'm going to drop a couple more videos throughout the day today. I'll see y'all later. Have a good one, friends. Bye.